wasted a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of leads, just because we thought, oh, this guy is a VP from this big corporation, right? Or this guy is a VP and he's, been in sales for the last 15 years of his life, right? A lot of people I've learned are good at interviewing and telling you what you want to hear. But it's, when they actually get into the job, that's like when the true colors come out.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to another fun and exciting version of our own Fearless Founders podcast with Ike and myself. And we're really excited to have Evan with us today. Evan Teshima is a great friend of mine, and we started out a couple of years ago. And at that time, he was already in the middle of negotiating the sale of his company, and so it was exciting times. He started 4Up as a software company for the golfing industry back in late 2011, and ended up a couple of years ago selling it to Battery, the PE side of Battery Ventures. And he has grown the business and had 150 employees. He did everything the classic founders way. And so we're excited to have him here. So Evan, we're really glad you're here. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Not at all. So Ike and I have many questions for you, and this is just the normal way we go with things. Tell us, first of all, how did you come up with the idea of even going into that whole golfing world, and how did you particularly target the golfing courses and such, golf courses?
Yeah, so I actually grew up golfing, so I've always had a passion for the game. And I was at BYU in a class called Creating New Ventures with a teacher named John Richards. And we were tasked with thinking of, different ideas and so forth. And at this time, I was even thinking about starting a company. But as I went through the class, it became a lot more interesting to me. And so the original idea I came up with was it was like a social media play for golf. So I wanted to be able to create like a community for golfers and help like similar handicaps meet each other, create tournament play outside of the regular tournaments that golf courses did. So I just really wanted to kind of create that Facebook for golf. Thought it was an amazing idea. So I got with a co-founder at BYU and we started pitching it to like the business plan competitions and everything else there. Never made it past the first round. It was like pretty bad. We would spend like night after night, like putting aside our homework and tests and everything else, like putting together business plans and thinking that it was like the greatest thing and the greatest idea. But no one really seemed to like it. And literally, we entered in several competitions and never made it to even like the real pitch round, right? Like they didn't even like the business plan enough to like give us an opportunity to pitch to them. So yeah, but meanwhile, during that process, I was able to get to know John Richards pretty well, and he was running a program called Boom Startup, and he liked me. He liked my co-founder Joel, and so he basically got us into this program, which is basically kind of like a Y Combinator. It was just Utah's version, a little bit smaller. So we worked with mentors and investors on our business model, and through that process, we literally pivoted 7 times because like our first model wasn't working, right? We're trying to get to like 1 million users first before $1 million, but we had no money and just like it just wasn't, there wasn't the right path there. Then we tried to get into like booking tee times for the public, and the integrations weren't working on that side. And we just kept failing and failing. And we were meeting with golf courses, and they would say, "Oh, that's a nice idea, right? That's a great idea." But it kind of sounded like I was talking to my mom, and she was just trying to motivate me to keep going, in a sense. So we kind of ran into that pretty quickly. But one of the biggest issues that kept coming up was their point of sale system. So they would just make off comments like, "Oh, my POS is a real POS," and I'm just like, "Well, what's a point of sale system," right? Because literally every golf course that we met with would make side comments about their point of sale system. And so as we dug into it and met with these golf courses about what their point of sale system was, like I literally didn't even know what the system did. We sat behind these facilities and watched them use it, and we quickly learned that if you wanted a point of sale, which is basically a system that runs all your transactions, your credit card transactions, runs your inventory and everything else, right? Literally, you had to call a company that provided it. They had to send out a representative. They had to install one or two servers, right? They had to download the software onto one or two terminals. So it was completely client server side software. If the accountant at the city needed reports from the golf course, the GM would literally have to drive the reports over to the city and give it to them, right? If they wanted to look at their tee time reservations, like all their bookings for the day, they had to go to the golf course to open up the software and see what their times are for the day instead of being able to pull it up on their phone or at home. And so as we went through this, we really like found that, call it that shark bite pain, and we said, well, hey, why don't we just do what Salesforce did and create the first cloud-based software in the golf industry? And so, literally, like I said, we had no idea what the point of sale system was, but we had a tech guy with us, a tech co-founder, and we just sat behind a ton of golf courses, asking what they liked and what they disliked, right? And so we knew we were on to something. And the benefit to it is not only were there pain points, but with the point of sale system, like golf courses were able to, we were able to collect money, right? We were able to like charge for the system right away. So we were able to go for like the $1 million play first instead of the million user play, which at that time, like it was very hard for us to raise funding. Like the golf space was not sexy. We were, entrepreneurs right out of college for the first time. Like I get it now, being an investor myself, I might have difficulties with that type of situation as well. So anyways, like literally our customers were our investors. Like that's how we viewed them, because that's how we stayed afloat. And so we literally built side by side with golf pros building this system on the cloud. And that way we're able to build it into like tablet versions. We're able to, give access to golf courses, like to, their staff from home, from different locations. We were able to do remote setups and implementations, cut down costs on that side. Our updates, we could just push updates to the cloud and it would go out to everyone. So we didn't have to send out download links. Literally, some of the golf courses that jumped onto our system jumped on because like lightning struck their building and fried their servers, so they lost their software and all their data for the last like 15 years. So like, of course, that was a whole different play with the cloud. They didn't have to worry about that. So we really timed the market right. We got lucky on that side, but it was because we listened, right? That we pivoted 7 times and found the right model, which was a cloud-based point of sale for golf courses, which turned into food and beverage point of sale, reservations, online booking, marketing. So we're able to branch off from there. But there's a lot more to it than just that, but that was kind of like the beginning there. So
Ike, wasn't that a great summary?
Awesome. Yes. Yes.
The amount of pivots you had to make. I'll write. You'll see me writing notes every now and then, Evan. Hey, so just as a heads up, there's so many topics here, but just two things you would say to first-time tech founders. Just two words of advice, two elements. What would they be?
For like the beginning stage of a business, a lot of times people ask me that.
$1 million that they're trying to get the $1 million. They're not there yet, maybe. But they're also not in the idea phase, right? Like they have some customers, some employees.
Yes. Yeah. So I would say my main two things is first, the CEO and the COO, whoever you have as the people running the operations, need to know how to sell, and they need to be the ones in the very beginning selling customers. And I just say that from my own experience, right? This could be different for other businesses, but being a salesman myself, I was able to get on calls, understand the clients, understand their needs. So it actually turned me into kind of like a product guy / sales guy, because I had to work with our technical founder on the changes that needed to be made. And at the beginning of a business, if you don't have a lot of funding or any funding at all, like you have to be a bit scrappy. And if you know how to sell, right, like that makes a world of a difference, because you can drive revenue that way. A lot of people kind of frown upon it. Like I've met with a lot of, first-time founders that want to focus on ideas and innovation, and they want to be the vision guy, and that's all fine and dandy. But the truth is like it's really hard to find like product market fit right off the bat. And a lot of people want to go out and give out surveys and see what people like and whatnot, which there's some merit to that and helpfulness. But nothing tells you more about a product than when people pay money for it. So in our business, literally, we were selling air at one time, right? Like, oh yeah, we do a point of sale. Like, hey Joel, you need to build that. like we were selling features that we like really didn't have, because we were just trying to figure out what like the customers needed in a sense, right? And so we would build them along with our customers. But at the end of the day, someone's not going to buy anything from you unless it's actually solving a problem that they have. And so I've always said like the best form of validation is sales, right? Getting in there and selling it. Better, and if you're failing and no one wants it, that's probably telling you something, right? You're like not on the right track. So I would say if you don't know how to sell, learn how to sell, because you're either selling to your customers, or you're selling to investors, or you're selling to people that you're trying to recruit for $0 to join your business and take a little bit of equity and a chance on you. So I would say sales is the biggest thing. The second part I would say is, as far as the tech world goes, having an in-house team, whether that is like just your CTO, or if you guys that you are working in-house with. I favor that side just because like in the very beginning days when you're building a product, you need to have like technical people that are bought into it in a sense, right? Like if you have a dev team out in India, they don't know what your vision is. They don't know what you're trying to accomplish, right? But when you have like technical people that are on sales call listening to like these customers talk about their problems and their issues, it brings more life to the software and the things that you're trying to solve. So I really like the idea of like a strong technical team in-house. And a lot of times and we started with one because we couldn't afford anything else. And he luckily came on for $0 and a lot of equity, right? But like, you have to kind of get someone in there that understands the software. And also things change so much that I've seen so many disasters where startups are hiring out teams in India and then they change, and then they have to pivot, and the teams don't understand what's going on, and there's just so many things that can like be miscommunicated, especially when you're trying to be flexible and nimble and trying to find product market fit. That I just don't like really believe that outsourced teams are the best way to start a company. Now I can understand like once you have your in-house team and then you have outsourced teams like building different parts of the software, maybe not the core products, but that's just my personal take after being through the battle and going through it myself. So
no, that's great. Yeah.
That's a set for you.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I know. So, Evan, give us the small question to set the stage up. Give us a little bit of the scale that you accomplished with your company, so that our audience can understand. Like, what you can say this from the number of employees, number of customers. Tell us the stages so that we can actually ask the questions for the right stages that you've been through.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I call ourselves bootstrapped. However, we did raise a round of 200,000 of a convertible note. But we paid back the majority of that, right? So even 200,000 is not a lot, but we paid back the majority. So like that's literally the entire funding that 4UP ever took on, right? So from our perspective, we had to get into the black really, really quick. And so that's why like I always say that we had to focus on sales and everything else, right? By the time we sold the business, we were getting close to the 150 employee mark. But we always hired pretty slowly. It took us about 10 years from start to finish. But when you're a bootstrap company, you can't like just hire on a ton of people all at once, right? It like takes time. So it's really a slow process on that side. So for us, like it was like a slow hire type of situation. And that just gave us time to not make a lot of big mistakes on that side.
I can definitely relate. The first 7 years of my enterprise was bootstrapped, so I can relate. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you transition, or if you ever transition managing the product. I think you were involved with the product. You listened to customers in the beginning. You built it based on what they did. But have you ever transitioned the product to somebody else, product manager, or were you always involved from start to end?
So me and my co-founder, we were pretty involved in the product and in sales, like in both, right? Because we kind of had to. But we probably transitioned out of that in like year 3 or 4, 4 or 5, probably right around there. And we always kind of, we were always very much involved in the product and what was going on. But as we grew, like our focus kind of became a little bit more just on management and managing like the product managers and the sales team and so forth. And so I would say, about year 4 or 5, it took us till about then to like kind of take our hands off. And it took even longer to take my hands. I think my biggest issue was like holding on to sales too long, because I probably sold myself for the first like 5 years or so, 6 or 7. And even in the later years, like I would focus on the bigger deals and help out on that side, which I thought was pretty helpful. But coming from the sales side, like I always felt like, oh, we only have so many leads and I'm the best one to like close these leads sometimes. So I didn't like want to give them up. But I learned pretty quickly, that I needed to give that up, and we needed to kind of go through a transition where maybe our conversion rates weren't as high, so I could focus on other parts of the businesses that needed it. And we found, salespeople that ended up actually selling way better than I ever did. But it took us a little bit of time, but that was probably one of the harder things in product for me personally to give up, was like the sales side and that drive and getting things going on that side.
The reason I mentioned this, thank you. The reason I mentioned is, Bino and I talked to a lot of tech founders, and I think it's important for them to notice that, okay, you can outsource your development team when you're building it. Got that. The second is you cannot outsource the sales in the early days. Got that. But for technical founders, it is also very hard to let go of the product when the time comes. That's why I want to tie it. I think there are different stages of the company that the founders has to own certain functions. You can outsource it, but when the time comes, you have to let go every single one of those.
So there's actually an interesting story here. So our original CTO, Joel Hawkins, amazing guy, and his talent was building stuff really fast, right? Which is always not the best way to do things, but he had the product. It was just him building the product, right? And one of the mistakes that we made is we kind of looked into it. We realized, okay, we're running into some issues with bugs and so forth, and we've been doing this. Like, we probably need a CTO to replace him. Like, we still want him part of the company. He still liked to build, right? And he was wanting to hold on a bit. But we actually went out and found like a CTO without telling him, in a sense, which was a big mistake on our part. Now, we didn't hire the CTO until we told him, but that was like that was a hard conversation to have. And we realized really quickly what a mistake that was, to not involve him in the hiring process. We did have good discussions, and he realized like he did need to let that position go with the product to someone that was probably more fit for that stage of the business. So huge mistake on our side. Like I said, like that created a little bit of a rift in our relationship. He did understand at the end of the day, but he did make good points. Like, I could have helped you guys, and I do see what you guys are seeing, right? But that lost a little bit of his trust in us, because we kind of did it without him knowing, because we are afraid of telling him, in a sense, right? Now, if I were to do it again, like, of course, I'd have a conversation way beforehand and be like, hey, let's like find someone to like replace a lot of your duties and so forth that can do a little bit better. And let's find a better position that's better suited for you, right? Like, I wish I would have done that in the beginning, but that was probably one of the mistakes that we did make during the process. It worked out at the end of the day. We found a great CTO. And our first CTO, he did stay on until the very end. He was amazing throughout the whole process and through the whole transition, getting everything over to the new CTO. But he had to give up a lot of the product and a lot of the things that he had done since the beginning. I mean, he built basically everything since the beginning, and he had to give that up, right? And management to someone else. And so he would be the right person to talk to about more of like the product side, but and his feelings
Okay.
towards
Yeah.
us. But anyways,
Next guest.
that's just a
We're writing
quiz.
it down.
Exactly. But anyways, that was definitely a mistake that we had made. But we did take the right route. We just did it in the wrong order, I would say. So
Thank you. One of the topics that Ike is also familiar with, and I see it in every founding CEO, is to get the right sales leader help. It's so hard to get that, and just not because it's hard to relinquish. It's that there aren't people that have the same passion, same intensity. Hopefully, they've got the sales experience to be able to lead the team in the right direction at the right velocity. But I can tell you of the number of times he's had to change his VP of sales equivalent, CRO, whatever. Tell us a story about how you got that transition, because it's hard. It's a hard thing, because sales leaders, by the sheer fact that they're in sales, are very good at telling you exactly what you want to hear in the interview. And yet when it comes to job performance and their ability to actually get the results, almost always it's disappointing. How was your journey? And what did you do to ultimately wait through the downturn in the conversion to get it even better than you said?
Yeah, this is a bit of a sore spot for me because we made this mistake like too many times. Like, we didn't learn the first time, right? Like the first
I am
guy we
sure my
hired.
number is higher than your number. So like the number of mistakes, it's also it's okay.
Go. This is a good topic.
Yeah,
Give us a story.
yeah. So, anyways, like our first guy that we hired, I remember it was a few years in the business. We were able to generate enough revenue to like find like a good VP of sales in a sense to like replace me. And so we found this guy that he called himself a VP of Qualtrics. We didn't do really too many background checks on that. But anyways, smooth talker, great at interviewing. And we were super pumped about him, super excited. And yeah, that lasted, like we hired him on, lasted probably 3 months or so. um, I mean, he was making every mistake in the way. He couldn't even sell himself. Like, I mean, he was a great interviewer, right? But when it came down to like selling the product, like we had worked with him and we would sit down on demos, and he could not sell the product. And the problem is he was managing two other people that were basically SDRs on our team, and just starting out as salespeople, and they had no respect for him, and it was just a disaster in a sense, right? So we got rid of him, and then we got another VP of a different like software company. He said he was a VP. Once again, great interviewer. Got in there. This guy couldn't sell like he couldn't sell anything. Like it was. So one of the things we learned is like if a VP of sales can't sell the product himself, he's never going to get anyone on board to like trust him and to believe in him and to believe in his training and so forth. And so it was like disaster after disaster. We probably went through 3 VPs of sales, wasted a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of leads, just because we thought, oh, this guy is a VP from this big corporation, right? Or this guy is a VP and he's, been in sales for the last 15 years of his life, right? A lot of people I've learned are good at interviewing and telling you what you want to hear. But but it's when they actually get into the job, that's like when the true colors come out, right? So anyways, we made a ton of mistakes. What ended up being the most successful for us was hiring within the company. So our first salesperson, he was my loyal horse, Richie. He was the man. He sold really well, sold against me, and probably sold better than I did, better than our other co-founder. And he was great at that. We just never believed in his ability to actually manage a team. But yeah, a few years down the road, we just realized, all right, and we always thought about or heard the horror stories of never taking your best salesperson and making them the VP of sales. And so we always try to steer clear of that because he was the one like generating revenue and bringing in sales. And he was the one that hated the sales leaders the most that we brought in, right? And we even tried to bring in like sales consultants. And these sales consultants were even worse, right? Like, and so, yeah, we went through a ton of pitfalls there, but we landed on Richie and we're like, okay, look, you're going to do a hybrid where you're going to manage this team and you're going to have your own quota. Like we're going to, be serious here and you got to hit both because what's most important to us is that you're driving sales. We need that, right? Every month. And so he took the position and we never looked back. He was amazing. He actually hit his own quota. We're able to like decrease that over time because his time became a little bit more limited with the reps that we started to bring on. But he was a great VP of sales, and he was our VP of sales for the next like 5 or 6 years until like we sold the company. But at the end of the day, what made him a great VP of sales is he knew how to sell. So all the people that were coming in that we were recruiting, like they trusted him, right? They would listen to him. The sales culture was better because he would be like, hey guys, I've been there, I've done that, I've made the cold calls, right? I have sold into every different type of golf course imaginable, right? Like I know the concerns that are coming across your table. I know what works, right? And he came with much more credibility than any VP of sales from Qualtrics or whatever that came across our plate. So that was a testament to like us that hiring within was a good move for certain positions and so forth. So, anyways, that's how we got there. But it took us some time and a lot of lashings on our back, and we finally got there, and we never turned back, and that was the right move. So,
I think I hit a nerve. Ike, you had this experience. Tell the audience, what would you do differently now? And you have already, but what would you do differently from your experience? And tell the Evan what you did, just real fast. What went through you?
So first, I am a learner. I learn from my mistakes. This time around, my co-founder is the sales guru. That's so, and we are both sellers. Like we're gonna be sellers. We're gonna actually have a competition between him and I. We Evan, you don't know that we're not even live yet, so in stealth mode. So in about a month, 45 days or so, we're gonna go live. That's when the competition is gonna start, because so that's how I started. I've had so many mistakes as well, just like you did. Like the one of the best things I've done is I've hired my first sales leader again, just like you. There was no salary, but there was a huge commission until he hit his numbers. So that the commission rate was like 40% of the software, 50%, whatever. Once he hit his, say, $150,000, $170,000 salary, then the commission rate went down to 10%, so that we can survive. But there was no salary. And then after 7 years, I received some Series A money, like $15 million or so. So I had a lot of money to spend that I didn't own. And with that, we hired people. Like I think the first one was like managing $200 million sales organization, and checked all the boxes and all that. But it didn't work out. After a year, we had to part ways. And I hired another one who brought his own team with all the layers of sales leaders that he worked in the past and the salespeople. So the entire fabric of the sales changed, but they didn't know our software, they didn't know our space, they didn't know how we sold, all that stuff. So I'm not making those mistakes.
Yeah, that's a rough game, but you learn a lot through going through the fires, right?
So Evan, like on that note, yes, we as the founders learn a lot, right? I think I say, as long as the mistake you're making is not catastrophic, you learn from it and then you repeat it. Is that how you only learn, or did you have advisors, board members, or people that you called? Can you tell us a little? Because I think a lot of founders in the early stages, they see these famous people on social media, like the Zuckerberg and Sam Altman, whatever, and they think they've got everything, that that's how they need to be. They need to know everything from the start.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case for me. So how about you? Or how did you approach learning and surrounding yourself with people?
So first off, I learned really quickly that as an entrepreneur, you need to be a really good filter. Meaning, you're going to get kind of starry-eyed, right? Because you're going to meet a lot of like successful entrepreneurs and investors and business people out there that are going to give you their opinion on your business. But the fact is no one knows your business better than you do. And so we would get all these, insights from, investors that didn't know anything about like the golf space in a sense, right? But they had like good sound information to share with us. But maybe some of that information wasn't like the best, and we like made decisions on a few things that mentors would say, just because we thought that they knew everything in a sense. But we quickly learned that to like as an entrepreneur, you do need to reach out to mentors, other people that have been there and done that. But you have to, more importantly, be a good filter and take like what you think is super valuable and you can apply it to your business, and then take all the other crap and just like let go of it and forget about it in a sense, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
So we learned to do that pretty quickly. We had a lot of good mentors. As far as our board goes, we actually never really had a board outside of the founders. The board was us three founders. Like that was it. So, but then again, like I mentioned, John Richards, he was always a good mentor of ours, and he'd always give it to us straight, and I always appreciated that. So we would go to him about issues when it came to like contracts and things that like we felt that he was really good with. And then we found other people like golf industry experts that we would talk to just about the golf space and like if we're heading in the right direction and so forth. But more than anything, I truly believe in like having the right mentors is super important. Like even having Binoy helping through the acquisition talks, and like having him help me with processing my own thoughts, right? Because when you're going through an acquisition, like there's so many emotions, right? Because like you're such a poor entrepreneur for so long, and now you like
Yeah.
look at numbers and like I can retire and be in Costa Rica for the rest of my life. Like when you have those moments, like you start thinking funky. And so it was really good to have Binoy there to kind of be a third party and to help me process my thoughts and what was going on and stay in the moment. And there's nothing more important than you can do in an acquisition than like stay in the moment, stay present, stay confident, right? Like, so that was like super important for me at the time. But yeah, people like Binoy, other mentors have always been something that I've relied on, but I've also realize that I have needed to be a good filter. And I think every entrepreneur needs to be that way. What I say, and I always tell entrepreneurs when I meet with them and I consult with them, I say, hey, like, I really don't want you just to take everything I say for gold, because they'll look at me and be like, oh, he's been successful. He's retired, or he can do whatever he wants. Like he's got all the tips and the tricks. And it's like, no, I mean, I have a lot of good advice, but at the end of the day, whatever I say to you, I don't know your business better than you do. You need to take whatever I'm telling you, filter out all the crap that you don't think is going to help, and take whatever you think is valuable and apply that. And that might be just 1 to 2 things, but you're going to have to learn to be the good filter, because I'm going to admit right now, I don't know your business like you do. I just know certain core principles. And sometimes, you need to go away from those and make the call yourself as entrepreneur according to your gut, right? So I have to tell that to a lot of entrepreneurs that when I'm meeting with them, like you got to be a good filter. So
Binoy, I think we should dig into this filter, how to create, how to build that filter mechanism. I'll let you do that, but I have another one on the side topic. The I think you felt the selling the company. I went through a lot in a bootstrapping, VC, all that stuff. But selling the company was the hardest thing that I learned in the process. And Binoy was also by me, so he knows how much I struggled there. I learned a lot, and I think the founders should be careful because, like a lot of people in the past couple days learn how to be profitable, and the rates are going to come down soon. So the banks will open the door for the PE firms that they've been working for the past 30 years with low interest rate credits. So there will be a frenzy of PEs going after companies and trying to buy them by the revenue. So there will be a lot of founders, I think, needing help with going emotions of selling. I think they need to learn that, because I think there will be a lot of them coming in the next couple of years. So the founders needs to be very careful. To me, I also sold it to PE firm like you. We had like 3 lawyers on our side. There was like 17 on their side, with like the Deloitte army. So there's the human emotions, there's the process, there's a lot to pay attention. Maybe we'll do another session on that one alone.
Yes, for sure.
I think that's a valid point, Ike, because Evan has one perspective, but only one perspective. You've got your perspective, but only that perspective. And I think our viewers would appreciate the selling side. I think we should actually, Evan, down the road, we mean it, we're revisiting. So let's do it again.
Yeah.
So, but he said something about filters. I was thinking the same, Ike. There are two things. And let me give you a preamble. I've been behind the scenes a little bit on the VC side and companies who actually invest as a professional entity, not just a solo investor. And there's a whole discipline and rigor and math and all of that. But both of you know that when with the money, for many founders particularly, they get starry-eyed and go, whatever you say, okay, whatever, right? Because you've done it before, but they still don't know the business. You nailed it. It's a difficult topic when you say you need to pull your own, use your own filter. And the biggest lesson that I've learned, and you two can both chime in, the biggest filter I've learned is ultimately the deep breath that says, this is my business. This is my business. When you make it, it's like my family. I know my family. Don't you ever come into my family and tell me what to do with my kids, how to interact with my wife. You cannot tell me that, even though you've got your own family, or in this professional environment, multiple experiences with multiple families. And when I say this is my company and related to my family, all of a sudden, the accuracy of the filter improves exponentially, because now, oh yeah, I do believe my own instincts. I do know my kids. I do know my founders, partners. I do know my employees. I know my clients. No, just because you're an intellectual, Harvard-trained, math-pushing analyst does not make you an expert in my business. And that my business and my family was what grounded me. Thoughts, Evan, what do you think? How to ground so that you can filter correctly?
Yeah. So like when it comes to like acquisitions and making those types of decisions, right? Like for me, looking at the business in a sense, right? Like if we kind of go on the acquisition topic, like I felt that the company was not like mine. I felt it was ours and we were like a family. And one of my biggest concerns was like the group coming in, like, are they going to be good for the employees here long after I leave, in a sense, right? And I didn't know PE firms too well, to be honest with you. Like, you hear the good stories and the bad stories and so forth. But that was like really one of the biggest focuses in talking to mentors and everyone else, was like, how do I find the right company? Because, yeah, at the end of the day, you start a company because, like, you do want that financial liberty, right? Like that's one of the main goals, at least for most entrepreneurs. But it's not as easy as that, right? Because as you start taking advice from people, it's like, oh yeah, you can be financially stable forever and you don't have to work forever, and that's great, and you're going to get that feedback from a lot of people. And investors are going to be like, well, their motive is they want a good exit, so they want you to sell as well, right? And so you have to kind of filter those types of things. And then for me, I had to really think about not just my life, but what about the life of my co-founders, what about the life of the employees. We had a great culture at 4UP. Everyone loved working there. Well, I think everyone loved working there. Most people did, right? Or at least they said they did. Our NPS score looked good. But anyways, we really did have a good culture. We were growing. Things were wonderful. And it's like that tight family unit that you don't want to break up. And so you're kind of like, there's so many emotions going on, right? And then on top of that, you have politics and everything going on in the world and the economy. And you're like, well, what if our business fails and this is all for nothing? And there's so many emotions that go around, right? That, finding the right mentors and being able to listen and filter the proper information and to be in the right frame of mind. Like it's important to find mentors that can get you in the right frame of mind, that have been where you are, so they can say, hey, Binoy, or hey, Evan, stop. Like, just stop your emotions and everything that's going on right now. Like, let's reset. Let's think about the current situation. Let's like measure here, 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 right? Like, I had mentors that were able to do that. And then I had other mentors and family members and whatnot that were like, hey, yeah, like that sounds amazing. Like, you should get that done today. Right. So, anyways, hopefully that answers your question. But in a sense, when it comes down to situations like acquisitions, you really have to understand that like we are are emotional human beings, and so like you have to play the emotional side and the logical side, and you kind of have to get those to balance in a sense to make the right calls and the right decisions, and to filter what makes sense, right? Like you might get all emotional because some guy that you've always admired is giving you advice, right? Because he's been there. You might be a billionaire or whatever. But you have to like take the logical side. You have to like set some emotion aside and be like, okay, does that actually make sense for me, my family, my company, right, at this time? And you have to be able to filter that way. So it's not like being a filter is actually pretty difficult, because you have to balance both the emotional side and your perception, right? And you have to balance like the logical side and the logistics. Like, does this even make sense for what I'm trying to accomplish at this time? So
wonderful. And I jump at this topic too. What comments are there before we transition to maybe one last topic?
I was going to transition to a different topic, so good. You can start if you want.
Everyone asks, and I know every founder has this in their head. Do I make a business and position it to sell from day one, or do I just build a business and hope somebody finds me? Or, hey, I'm halfway through the business. I need to start preparing my business for sale. How did you go about? How did this sale happen? You head down, all of a sudden somebody knocks on the door and says, hey, I want to talk to you. How did it happen for you, Evan?
Yeah, so we actually had a partner. So first off, I wasn't even looking to sell. I mean, we were growing, things were great. Like acquisition was like the last thing on my mind, to be honest with you, right? And so we were growing, and then we had one of our partners come in, a very strong partner that we shared a lot of clients with, and they said, "Hey, we want to buy your business. Basically, if you don't, then we're probably going to look to be agnostic and split from you guys, right?" And we're like, "Okay, well, what's the number?" And they threw out a number that was very nice, right? So that started the clock going, and the mind thinking a bit, because the number that they threw out was like a number I never really even anticipated for the business, especially at that time, right? And so it definitely did like perk my interest. But then I thought, well, why don't we just take a look in the market, right? Because we had PE firms reaching out to us all the time. I mean, any entrepreneur will get this. If they're in like year 3, 4, or 5 of their business, they're going to be pinged by cold calling PE firms all the time, or VC firms and so forth. So I just found a few of them, and there are a few like firms that we had been in touch with in the past that I just pinged and said, hey, you know what? We're thinking about selling the business. Not sure yet. I mean, here are some of our metrics. Uh, you know, and we've had some pretty good valuations come in, so just want to see if you're interested. And all of a sudden, like that just opened the floodgates, and a ton of PE firms were interested, and the valuations just started going up and up and up. Plus, we were in 2021, so and the crazy thing was, it's like COVID was right before that, and all golf courses were like shutting down, or half of them, and then they opened up, and then golf just became amazing, like amazing space to play in at that time, because that's the only thing people could do during COVID was play golf, right? And so things started to shoot up, interest rates were down, so PE firms were able to borrow a lot more money to buy businesses and so forth, and so valuations just kept going up and up, and it became really serious at that time. And then I realized, hey, like I'm in a moment right now where I know things are cyclical. Um, Perhaps I should entertain this, because the numbers we're getting, like, some of us, we don't have to ever work again. Like, and that is kind of like one of the main reasons why you started a business in the very beginning, right? So that's kind of what spurred everything. And then we basically went through a lot of the talks. The best part about it was is we were cash flow positive. We were growing at a great rate. We just had the best 2 years, like 2020, 2021 were absolutely amazing. So I was like in control. I had the hot seat, right? And I could say no, and I had no problem saying no to PE firms that came in with lower valuations. Like, nope, gone, like done. Like I had no problem saying no. And when there are requests to change things, like they even tried to do earnouts, and I said no. And I made it clear in the very beginning, I will
Good
not
for you.
do an earnout. Like 100% no earnout, right? Like maybe if you want to give me stock options afterwards or whatever, great. But like no, like this thing is going to sell for the full price, and it's going to be cash in a sense, right? So we're in a very good position to make those demands. And so my advice is that like in the very beginning, investors will tell you, oh, you should prep to sell in 3 to 5 years, right? That's a bunch of crap. Like the truth is you never know when the market is right to sell. And there's no way you could possibly plan to sell your company at a certain date or time or even time frame. Like it just doesn't work that way in a sense. And so my advice from what I've learned is build the best business you can, grow that sucker, and just play the long game. Like I'm going to hold on to this forever and build it that way. And if you build it that way, acquisitions talks will happen and offers will come. But if you're trying to get out and be done with the business, you're going to be in a very vulnerable spot, because if you do get in a situation where you do have acquisition talks, you're going to be a lot more vulnerable to valuations and everything else, because you're going to be like, I want to get out of this. I don't want to do this anymore, right? And trust me, these PE firms, these guys and other people, they're professionals. They know how to negotiate way better than you do. They know how to read your feelings. They know exactly where you sit and where you stand. And so if you're not in a good frame of mind, and if you're thinking like, I just need to sell this company, like you're in trouble, right? So you have to have that mindset. I'm going to build this forever. And acquisition talks and opportunities will happen if you're building a good business. If you build a good business, you have a great asset that can be sold whenever, to be honest. But the valuation is really going to be dependent on the cycles and so forth. And luckily we sold in 2021, which was a great time. So
amen to everything you said to my topic, with the best example ever. Ike, he nailed it. He just nailed it. Amen. We have 3 minutes, Ike. So go.
One last question, 3-minute question. So you sold it, you became investor. I chose to start my own because it was so hard for me to give my money to other founders, because there's so much learning to do. So how do you do it? How did you came to conclusion, and how do you pick the founders that you want to support, give your money as an investor? What is the thought process?
So mine's pretty simple. I'll just be honest. So I'm a little bit more conservative on this side. So I just put money into 2 separate pre-seed funds, basically. That spread it over a ton of different smaller companies. One fund is Startup Ignition with John Richards, because I trust the guy. He's had a lot of success. He knows how to pick, a lot of good companies, in my opinion. And so that's one of them. And then I invested in another. So it's being spread. And then I've had a few startup deals that have come to me that have had, pretty good valuations. Just pretty enticing for investors, that made a lot of sense, and they had good teams in place. So I actually haven't really done much as far as like pre-seed, just one-off deals. Truly, I've talked to a lot of investors. In order to do that right, you kind of have to commit to putting into like 20 different companies to find success there. And that's actually something you'll hear from multiple angels that have been successful. So, finding 20 deals to put money in, I just felt like at this time where I'm focused in different areas, I'm just going to put them into pre-seed funds, guys that are like really specialized and can really focus. And I'll be an LP advisor, which I am to,
Cool.
a few of these groups. And so it's been great to like work with some of these companies and to help with advice and so forth. But I'm kind of doing the S&P 500 where I just like spread it amongst a ton of groups. But there's a lot of investors out there that won't even touch pre-seed funds, right? But I still like need that in my life. Like it's exciting, like zero or hero. But I want to get something out of it, and I do feel that these funds can get something out of it, right? So, anyways, that's how I've approached it.
Great, thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
that was so good.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic discussion. Thank you, Evan. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Ike, wouldn't you agree? That was really
awesome.
fun.
It was great to have you, Evan. It was great.
Beautiful. I've
course.
written down all the topics that we can spin into subsequent follow-ups, as well as the title for our podcast. Evan, Teshima, I'm proud of you. We're proud of you. Congratulations. Thanks for sharing your input and insights to the rest of our audience. We'll see you again soon. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Good day.